Hello viewers and welcome back the Sleepy Narrator. Tonight, we're beginning a calm and gentle trip through time, so far back that even the stars appeared unfamiliar, and the continents had only just started drifting apart like slow-moving puzzle pieces. This is the story of dinosaurs, how they came to be, how they dominated, and how they eventually made a rather dramatic exit. But don't worry, we won't be racing through the Mesozoic like a charging herd of triceratops. No, this is a peaceful walk through ancient landscapes, designed to help you relax, clear your mind, and maybe even fall asleep before we get to the asteroid. Hopefully, this video won't be too fascinating, because the purpose is to help you unwind. But if you're still awake when the T-Rex makes its entrance, at least you'll leave with some prehistoric trivia to impress your friends. Before we start, if you find this sort of slow, soothing science narration helpful, whether it helps you fall asleep or simply quiets your thoughts, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It helps more sleepy viewers find their way here. And just out of curiosity, where in the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments and feel free to mention your local time. I love seeing the peaceful parts of the planet where this channel reaches. Whether it's midnight in Manchester or 2 in the morning in Tokyo, you are very welcome here. So make yourself comfortable. Maybe you're already lying in bed, the lights are low, and your pillow is perfectly soft. Take a deep breath. The dinosaurs are waiting, and they've been waiting for around 230 million years. We're in no rush. Let's begin not with a bang, but with stillness, the quiet that comes after a world-ending event. Roughly 252 million years ago, Earth had just experienced the most severe mass extinction in its entire history. Known as the Great Dying, it wiped out about 90% of marine creatures and 70% of vertebrates on land. Picture walking through a forest and hearing absolutely nothing. No buzzing insects, no rustling leaves, no frogs croaking. Just wind passing through barren trees and the distant groan of a world reshaping itself. If Earth had a reset button, this was it. The stage had been cleared. From the burned remains of the Permian period, something new was beginning to emerge. But before we meet the dinosaurs, we need to understand the world they entered. It wasn't just a different time. It was practically an entirely different planet. The continents hadn't yet scattered across the globe like thrown puzzle pieces. They were still joined together in one enormous landmass called Pangaea, surrounded by a single vast ocean known as Panthalassa. You could, in theory, walk from the area we now call New York to what we call New Delhi without stepping in water. Just remember to pack sunscreen. Much of Pangaea was dry desert, hot and dusty under a scorching sun. The air was thinner, the oxygen content lower, and the climate extremely unstable. Volcanoes sent gases into the skies. Giant lava flows reshaped the surface. Plants were tough, scraggly types adapted to heat and drought. But in this harsh environment, evolution began trying new things. A group of reptiles called archosaurs started to gain ground. The name means ruling reptiles, and it's appropriate, because from this group came not only the dinosaurs, but also pterosaurs, crocodilians, and eventually birds. Archosaurs had some impressive advantages: upright legs for more effective walking, stronger lungs, and in some cases, early signs of being warm-blooded. While other animals moved sluggishly like tired lizards, archosaurs were quick, agile, and strangely well-suited to a recovering Earth. Among the early archosaurs was a creature named Euparkeria, a small, fast-moving predator that dashed among the rocks of what is now South Africa. It wasn't a dinosaur, but it offered a preview. Lightweight, two-legged, fast. The basic design was coming together. Then, about 230 million years ago, during the mid-Triassic period, true dinosaurs finally appeared. They were small at first, nothing like the massive giants we think of today. Imagine Aeoraptor, a slender little hunter the size of a medium dog, moving through a forest thick with ferns. Or Herosaurus, with its long jaws and pointed teeth, chasing prey through the twilight. These early dinosaurs probably didn't roar. More likely, they hissed or croaked, more similar to annoyed birds than monstrous beasts. At this stage, dinosaurs weren't at the top. They shared the land with many competitors. Other archosaurs, enormous amphibians and strange synapsids, reptile-like ancestors of mammals that looked like a mix between a Komodo dragon and a weirdly shaped platypus. It was a crowded, hazardous world. So what gave dinosaurs the advantage? One benefit was how they stood. Most reptiles at the time had legs that sprawled out to the sides like modern lizards. Dinosaurs, though, stood upright, with their legs positioned directly underneath their bodies. This allowed them to move faster and use energy more efficiently. Try running with your knees turned out sideways. It doesn't work very well. Another benefit was how they breathed. Many scientists think early dinosaurs had a breathing system similar to birds, with air sacs that allowed constant airflow through the lungs. That would have been a huge benefit in the low-oxygen atmosphere of the Triassic. While other animals wheezed and gasped, dinosaurs just kept going. And we can't ignore luck. At the end of the Triassic, around 201 million years ago, another mass extinction event swept across the Earth, most likely caused by huge volcanic activity in what is now the Atlantic Ocean. This event wiped out many of the dinosaurs' rivals, especially large amphibians and competing archosaurs. With the competition cleared, dinosaurs were free to spread. From modest beginnings, they were about to take over. Even in their early days, they were diversifying rapidly. Some stayed small and fast, hunting insects and small animals in ancient forests. Others began growing larger, trying out different diets, plant-eaters with tiny teeth, longer necks, and the early versions of the huge bodies we now link with the Jurassic. And yes, many early dinosaurs likely had feathers, not for flight, but for warmth and maybe even for showing off. It's humbling to think that what started as fuzzy insulation to survive cold Triassic mornings would eventually lead to hummingbirds and falcons. Evolution likes to reuse what works. Still, early dinosaurs weren't the only creatures around. The Triassic landscape was a blend of all kinds of life: crocodile-like phytosaurs lurking in swamps, armored etosaurs feeding on plants, and massive amphibians that sat still like fallen logs, waiting for something to come close enough to eat. But dinosaurs had the momentum. Their adaptability, their body structure, and their way of breathing gave them the edge. And after the Triassic extinction, they took full advantage. In a few million years, they had become a wide range of forms, some eventually as tall as buildings, others small enough to sit in your hand. But here, at the end of the Triassic, they were just getting started. Quietly and steadily, they were laying the foundation for a rule that would last over 160 million years. And they did it all without smartphones, air conditioning, or coffee. Just strong lungs, upright limbs, and an incredible amount of evolutionary determination. So as the Triassic sun sets on the first real dinosaurs, we leave them in a world both strange and oddly familiar. A world where surviving was difficult, but the future was full of possibilities. They hadn't grown horns or plates or giant frames just yet, but their journey had begun. The dinosaur era was only beginning. When the curtain lifted on the Jurassic period, Earth looked and sounded different. The planet had just endured another extinction event, one that conveniently cleared away many of the dinosaurs' early competitors. The once crowded Triassic ecosystem now had plenty of open niches, and dinosaurs were ready to fill them. Thanks to their upright stance, efficient respiratory systems, and evolutionary head start, they spread rapidly across the supercontinent and began to evolve into an incredible variety of forms. The Jurassic period, which spanned from about 201 to 145 million years ago, was a time of thriving life, drifting continents, and remarkable dinosaur development. Earth was warmer and more humid than during the Triassic. Massive inland seas shimmered beneath bright skies, and lush ferns, towering conifer trees, and the first flowering plants blanketed the land in green. With this explosion of vegetation came new possibilities, especially for creatures that figured out how to eat it. Enter the sauropods. Sauropods were the long-necked titans of the dinosaur world, gentle giants like Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, and Brachiosaurus. If you've ever seen a dinosaur calmly grazing in a picture book, nibbling treetop leaves with a sleepy look, chances are it was a sauropod. These animals were the giraffes of their time, only far more dramatic. Some sauropods reached lengths of over 100 feet. That's longer than a blue whale, a tennis court, or most grocery stores. How they even existed, let alone flourished, remains one of evolution's great accomplishments. They had hollow bones, which helped reduce weight and stress on their bodies. Their necks were biological marvels, with numerous vertebrae and an effective system of air sacs that made breathing more efficient. And although their heads seemed tiny compared to their enormous bodies, they were perfectly suited for their lifestyle: scoop, chew, swallow, repeat. Living in groups and wandering across vast floodplains, sauropods could clear entire forests, acting like slow, steady, leaf-eating machines. And they had to. Some estimates suggest they needed to consume several hundred pounds of plant material each day just to survive. Imagine the sound of one of these giants strolling past, a rhythmic thud of enormous feet, the crunch of vegetation, and maybe a deep, echoing rumble, something between a foghorn and a whale call. But not all Jurassic dinosaurs were peaceful plant-eaters. With all that sauropod meat walking around, predators naturally stepped up their game. Say hello to Allosaurus, one of the top hunters of the Jurassic and a classic example of the theropod group. Bipedal, mostly carnivorous dinosaurs. Allosaurus was no small predator. It could grow up to 30 feet long, with a skull full of serrated teeth and strong forelimbs armed with claws that resembled nature's own can openers. Its body was built for agility and speed, and it likely used strategic tactics to go after larger prey. Whether it hunted in groups or simply ambushed targets on its own is still debated, but it was undoubtedly a serious threat. Predation during the Jurassic wasn't always about brute strength. Some theropods began showing signs of more specialized traits: lighter frames, sharper senses, and maybe even early feathers. This brings us to a groundbreaking moment in dinosaur evolution: the emergence of flight. Meet Archaeopteryx, discovered in the 1800s and often celebrated as the first bird, though it was more accurately a bird-like dinosaur. Archaeopteryx is one of the most famous fossils ever found. It had feathers, wings, and a wishbone, but also teeth, a bony tail, and claws on its wings. Evolution at this stage seemed to be trying out a new design. Whether Archaeopteryx could fly like today's birds is still debated, but it could likely glide or flutter from tree to tree. More importantly, its discovery confirmed something incredible: that birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs. Every pigeon you've seen in a park, every crow you've watched from a window, direct descendants of these Mesozoic survivors. Back on the ground, the Earth itself was continuing to shift. Pangaea was slowly breaking apart, splitting into two large continents: Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. As these landmasses moved away from each other, dinosaur populations became isolated, setting the stage for increased specialization and even greater diversity. In the north, heavily armored dinosaurs appeared, like Stegosaurus, with its iconic row of plates down its spine and spiked tail. Although it looked built for battle, scientists think the plates were used more for display or regulating body temperature than for defense, a kind of dinosaur fashion statement. Stegosaurus, by the way, had a brain about the size of a walnut, but that didn't stop it from getting along just fine. Intelligence isn't always key to survival. Sometimes, all you need is a good nose, thick skin, and a strong stomach for ferns. Meanwhile, the skies were becoming busier. Pterosaurs, the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight, ruled the air. Not technically dinosaurs, but closely related cousins, pterosaurs came in all sizes. Some were as small as pigeons, while others, like Dimorphodon and Rhamphorhynchus, had wingspans that stretched wider than many cars. These creatures looked truly alien, with leathery wings, elongated jaws, and sometimes elaborate head crests. They were like dragons, except scientifically plausible. While most attention goes to the giant dinosaurs, the Jurassic period was also home to smaller animals that played crucial roles in the ecosystem. Insect eaters, burrowers, early mammals, no bigger than your hand, and fast-moving predators the size of house cats all thrived in this world. The Jurassic wasn't just an age of giants. It was an age of complexity, layered ecosystems, rich with interactions we can only guess at. One of the most beautiful things about this time is the kind of evidence we have, not just bones but footprints. Fossilized tracks from the Jurassic offer glimpses into behavior, groups moving together, predators stalking, young dinosaurs walking beside adults. It's a quiet, haunting kind of record, the kind you'd miss if you didn't look closely, like reading footprints left in the sand after the tide rolls out. So, the Jurassic period wasn't just about giant plant-eaters and ferocious meat-eaters. It was a time of movement, adaptation, and biological experimentation. The Earth was warm. The skies were filled with flying reptiles. The forests echoed with the slow steps of sauropods and the distant calls of predatory theropods. And even though dinosaurs had spread across the globe and were more successful than ever, they weren't finished evolving. Nature never stands still. In the next part of their story, dinosaurs would become even more diverse, more extraordinary, and in some ways even more recognizable. But for now, imagine Earth beneath a Jurassic sun. Sauropods moving slowly through thick ferns, pterosaurs soaring above sparkling lagoons, and the sharp cry of a theropod echoing across distant hills. The dinosaur age was well underway, and they were just getting comfortable. By the time the Cretaceous period began, around 145 million years ago, the world was already full of dinosaurs, and they were more varied than ever. But the Cretaceous wasn't content to simply maintain the status quo. It pushed things even further. This was a time of intense evolutionary creativity, massive changes in geography and climate, and the eventual rise of some of the most iconic dinosaurs to ever walk the Earth. As the continents continued drifting apart, the Earth's surface looked more familiar. Oceans expanded, creating isolated habitats. Different groups of dinosaurs evolved in different parts of the world, each adapting to local environments. The planet became a patchwork of ecosystems, lush river deltas, dry inland plains, humid jungles, and even polar forests where it snowed during part of the year. One of the most dramatic changes during the Cretaceous wasn't an animal, but a plant. Flowering plants, or angiosperms, made their debut and quickly spread. These plants had advantages over the earlier ferns and conifers. They grew faster, spread through seeds carried by wind or animals, and offered a wide variety of food sources. The world began to bloom with color, fragrance, and variety. With them came pollinators, early bees, wasps, and butterflies, creating new relationships between plants and animals. Dinosaurs took notice. Some developed specialized teeth for chewing tougher vegetation. Others, like the famous duck-billed hadrosaurs, evolved hundreds of tightly packed teeth to grind down fibrous plant material. Some even had dental batteries, multiple rows of teeth that replaced themselves as they wore down, almost like a conveyor belt of chewing power. Hadrosaurs were among the most common dinosaurs of the Cretaceous. They came in many shapes and sizes, some with crests, some without. These crests were often hollow and connected to the nasal passages, meaning they may have been used to create deep, resonating sounds. Imagine a group of hadrosaurs moving through a foggy swamp, letting out eerie, echoing calls like ancient wind instruments. And then there were the armored ones, ankylosaurs, covered in bony plates like natural tanks. Some even had clubs at the ends of their tails, used for defense or maybe for show. Their backs were protected by thick armor and their skulls looked like helmets. They weren't fast, but they didn't need to be. Few predators wanted to take on a walking fortress. In contrast, other herbivores took a different approach, running. Ornithomimids, sometimes called ostrich dinosaurs, were fast and lightly built. They had long legs, small heads, and beak-like mouths. Some may have had feathers, and they probably relied on speed to escape danger rather than armor or size. But it wasn't all about the plant eaters. The Cretaceous period saw the rise of some of the most famous predators in history. Chief among them was Tyrannosaurus rex. T. rex was a later arrival, appearing near the end of the Cretaceous, about 68 million years ago. But when it showed up, it made an impact. This was no lightweight hunter. It could grow over 40 feet long, stand 12 feet tall at the hips, and weigh more than an elephant. Its skull was massive, filled with teeth that were thick, sharp, and strong enough to crush bone. Despite its tiny arms, which have been the subject of jokes for years, T. rex was an apex predator. Its sense of smell was excellent. Its bite force was enormous. And recent studies suggest it might have been surprisingly fast for its size. Maybe not a sprinter, but certainly capable of chasing down slower prey. Whether it was a scavenger, a hunter, or both is still debated, but it likely did whatever it needed to survive. And if you were a hadrosaur with a limp, you probably didn't want to see one coming. Of course, not every predator was a giant. The Cretaceous also had packs of smaller hunters, like Velociraptor. Made famous by movies, the real Velociraptor was about the size of a turkey, not a large dog. It had feathers, sharp claws, and a long, stiff tail for balance. Its most dangerous weapon was a curved claw on each foot, likely used for pinning down prey. Velociraptors may have been clever, social animals that hunted in groups, though that's still debated. But their agility, intelligence, and deadly tools made them effective hunters, especially when working together. And let's not forget that during this period, birds continued to evolve. The earliest bird-like dinosaurs began to develop better flight capabilities. Their feathers became more complex, their bones lighter. Over time, wings improved and tails shortened. Perching feet, better balance, and increased brain size followed. The skies that had once belonged solely to pterosaurs were now being shared. Pterosaurs themselves also changed. While earlier pterosaurs were small and light, some late Cretaceous species grew to enormous sizes. Quetzalcoatlus, for instance, had a wingspan that may have stretched over 30 feet. It was as tall as a giraffe and might have stalked small animals on foot when not flying. Its huge beak and lightweight body made it perfectly suited for soaring over vast plains in search of food. Meanwhile, mammals were continuing to live in the dinosaurs' shadow, small, nocturnal, and usually hidden. But they were evolving. Some began climbing trees, others burrowed, a few even glided. While they didn't rule the earth yet, their time was coming. Back on the ground, something new was forming: family care. Some dinosaurs began nesting in groups, protecting their young and even feeding them. Fossils show nests filled with eggs, sometimes arranged in neat circles. Some show adult dinosaurs guarding the nest. This was more than instinct, it was behavior. Nurturing, protection, and social interaction were becoming part of life. All of this diversity came at a price. The specialization that made many species successful also made them vulnerable to sudden changes. As the Cretaceous period went on, sea levels rose. Volcanic activity increased. Ecosystems began to shift. And then, around 66 million years ago, the world changed forever. In the sky above what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, a rock the size of a city hurtled toward Earth at over 40,000 miles per hour. The asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous was one of the most significant events in Earth's history. The explosion released more energy than billions of nuclear bombs. It triggered massive wildfires, sent shockwaves across continents, and blasted so much material into the atmosphere that sunlight was blocked for months. Photosynthesis stopped. Plants died. The animals that depended on them starved. The food chain collapsed from the bottom up. It wasn't just the asteroid. Around the same time, volcanic activity in what is now India released enormous amounts of gas and ash. The combination of impacts, both from above and below, transformed the climate rapidly and drastically. Three-quarters of all species went extinct. The age of dinosaurs was over, but not completely, because one group of dinosaurs survived. They had feathers, hollow bones, and small bodies. They could fly. They were adaptable and they lived everywhere from forests to coastlines. We call them birds. Today's birds, from hummingbirds to eagles, are living dinosaurs. Their ancestors outlasted the cataclysm. They were small enough to find shelter, to survive on less food, and to rebuild. In every chirp and flutter, in every soaring flight or peaceful song, the legacy of the dinosaurs continues. And as for the others, the massive sauropods, the mighty T-Rex, the armored ankylosaurs, the crested hadrosaurs, they live on too in stone. Their bones turned to fossils, their footprints hardened into rock, their stories preserved by time, waiting to be discovered. It's humbling to think that everything we know about them, every name, every species, every behavior, is built from what they left behind. The past speaks quietly, but it speaks, and thanks to science, we're learning how to listen. Though the age of dinosaurs had ended, Earth's story was far from over. What followed was a long period of recovery, reshaping, and new beginnings. Life didn't vanish, it transformed. The planet was scarred but not empty. From the ashes of extinction, evolution began its work again. The mammals, once hidden in the shadows of the dinosaurs, began to rise. They had survived because they were small, adaptable, and resourceful. Now, in a world where giants had fallen, the stage was theirs. In the early days after the extinction, the earth was quiet. The skies were darker. Forests were burned or gone. But life, as always, found a way. Insects returned first, feeding on decay and spreading pollen. Then plants slowly began to grow again. Ferns covered the ground, followed by flowering plants, grasses, and trees. As vegetation returned, herbivores followed, and then, inevitably, predators. The mammals diversified quickly. At first, they were still small, many no bigger than squirrels. But they filled every role they could: burrowers, climbers, runners, swimmers. Some evolved sharper senses to hunt at night. Others developed stronger jaws and teeth to chew tough plants. Within just a few million years, the world was filled with new kinds of creatures. This time period, called the Paleogene, was a reset button for the animal kingdom. It was a time of experimentation and opportunity. Without the dinosaurs dominating the land, mammals took over their roles. Some grew larger, others faster. New forms emerged. Early primates leaped through trees, hoofed mammals grazed across plains, and strange creatures unlike anything today roamed unfamiliar landscapes. As the continents continued shifting, Earth's climate also changed. For a while, it grew warmer. Tropical forests stretched far into the north, and strange animals like giant flightless birds and ancient relatives of whales walked along coastal shores. In South America, isolated by oceans, some mammals evolved into forms resembling marsupials, filling niches that predators like raptors had once held. But evolution wasn't just producing mammals. Birds, those surviving dinosaurs, also diversified. Some grew large and lost the ability to fly. They became predators again, with strong legs and sharp beaks. Others stayed small, navigating through branches, developing songs and building nests. Meanwhile, in the oceans, life also rebounded. New types of fish evolved. Coral reefs began to rebuild. Marine mammals like early whales appeared. Unlike their fish ancestors, these animals breathed air and gave birth to live young, just like their land-based relatives. Some evolved streamlined bodies for fast swimming. Others became massive filter feeders, cruising silently through the deep. The Earth was healing and changing. Over millions of years, life became more recognizable. Forests looked familiar. Animals began to resemble modern ones. Elephants, horses, cats, and bears all have ancestors that appeared during this time. Among them were early primates, small, tree-dwelling creatures with grasping hands and sharp vision. They weren't quite monkeys, and they definitely weren't humans, but they were on the path. Evolution takes time, and the story of humans wouldn't truly begin for tens of millions of years. But the seeds had been planted. Back on land, some mammals grew truly large. Titan others, massive plant eaters with bony horns, roamed open plains. Entelodonts, sometimes called hell pigs, were fearsome omnivores with huge heads and strong jaws. They looked like something between a pig and a bear and probably acted like a bit of both. These were not peaceful creatures, and as predators grew stronger, so did prey. Some animals developed armor, horns, or tough hides. Others evolved speed, agility, or sharp hearing. The old race between predator and prey was underway again, just with new runners. As the Paleogene gave way to the Neogene period, Earth's continents continued to move closer to their modern positions. Climate shifted again, cooling down this time. Grasslands spread across vast areas, replacing forests in some places. Animals adapted. Some grew taller to see over the grasses. Others developed hooves for running on open ground. Antelope-like creatures darted across savannas. Big cats, including saber-toothed predators, emerged. Wolves and ancestors of modern dogs learned to hunt in packs. Elephants with enormous tusks crossed wide valleys. And in the trees, primates kept evolving, developing bigger brains, more social behavior, and better hand control. Some of them descended to the ground. They learned to walk upright, freeing their hands for tools. They began to communicate in more complex ways. They formed groups, shared tasks, and passed knowledge from one generation to the next. These early humans didn't look like us, but they were close. Over time, their tools improved. Fire was tamed, shelter was built, language emerged. With every discovery, they became more capable, more able to adapt to different environments and solve new problems. Eventually, Homo sapiens appeared. That's us. We built societies. We crafted art. We tamed animals and planted crops. We crossed rivers, mountains, and oceans. We asked questions about stars, bones, and time. We studied the past to understand the present. And as we dug into the earth, we found the remains of those who came before. Fossils. Each fossil is a page from Earth's history, a bone turned to stone, a leaf pressed into rock, a footprint frozen in time. They are clues, messages from lives long gone. By studying them, we piece together stories millions of years in the making. We've found bones of giants buried beneath cities, tracks of herds preserved in desert stone, nesting sites, fossilized forests, and even bits of skin and feathers locked in amber. Every discovery tells us more: how they lived, how they moved, what they ate, and even how they died. And with each answer, new questions emerge. Did this creature care for its young? Did it migrate with the seasons? Did it call to others in the night? These are the questions that keep scientists digging, literally and figuratively, because science is never finished. It's a conversation with the past, an effort to learn from what came before. And perhaps that's what makes the story of the dinosaurs so powerful. It's not just about bones and extinction. It's about endurance, transformation, and curiosity. They ruled the Earth for over 160 million years. We've been here for a tiny fraction of that time, but we study them because their story is part of ours. They remind us that life changes, that environments shift, that species rise and fall, that even the most powerful creatures can disappear, and that sometimes survival comes down to timing, adaptability, and a bit of luck. So next time you see a bird flying overhead, think about what it really is: not just a bird, but a tiny, feathered echo of a world long gone. A reminder that dinosaurs never truly left us. They just changed form. And maybe, when we watch a child holding a toy dinosaur or visit a museum to see a fossil skeleton, we're not just learning about the past, we're honoring it. Because their story didn't end with an asteroid. It lives on in stone, in science, and in every question we ask when we look up at the stars or down into the earth. We've traveled across eons, watched dinosaurs rise from small beginnings, saw them rule the planet, then vanish in a single, world-ending moment. We followed mammals as they grew into forms we'd recognize today. But now, let's slow down, shift focus, and take a step back. Not forward, not behind, but into the Earth itself. Because while dinosaurs are endlessly fascinating, the world they lived on, the ground beneath their feet and ours, is just as incredible. This planet isn't just a stage for life. It's part of the act, a living, breathing force. It shifts. It records. It speaks if we know how to listen. Let's listen. Pick up a simple stone. Maybe it's from your backyard or one you picked up during a walk. To most people, it's nothing more than a rock, dull, weighty, quiet. But inside that rock is a history so old it makes dinosaurs look recent. It may have once been part of a mountain ridge. Maybe it sat at the bottom of an ocean, buried under layers of sediment. It might have been pressed, cracked, melted, and solidified again, over and over across unimaginable time. Stones are storytellers. They speak not with words but with texture, shape, and composition. Each one carries a memory of something greater: volcanoes erupting, seas rising, continents drifting, meteors striking. They are memory crystals of a planet always in motion. That's what geology, the study of Earth's physical structure, lets us read. Through layers of rock, we piece together the events that shaped our world. Every layer, every stratum tells a story. A dark, ashy band might be the trace of a long-dead volcano. A layer filled with shells speaks of an ancient sea. A sudden break in layers could mean an earthquake, or worse, a mass extinction. The Earth records everything. It's just written in stone. And the Earth doesn't sit still. Its surface is made of massive plates, each drifting slowly atop molten rock. This process, plate tectonics, pushes continents into each other, pulls oceans apart, and reshapes the globe over millions of years. These shifting plates create mountains, cause earthquakes, open rifts, and close seas. What looks solid and unchanging is always on the move. That's how Pangaea, the single supercontinent where dinosaurs first walked, broke apart. And it's still happening now. Continents continue to drift. The Atlantic is expanding. The Himalayas are rising. The Earth beneath us is alive, not in a biological sense, but through heat, pressure, and motion. Even the tallest mountains, the ones that seem eternal, will one day be ground down to dust. Rivers carve valleys. Wind sands down cliffs. Glaciers scrape landscapes bare. Nothing stays still. The only constant is change. But while the Earth's crust shifts slowly, the sky above has transformed in more dramatic ways. Early Earth's atmosphere wasn't breathable. It was filled with noxious gases: methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide. Oxygen, the element we now rely on to stay alive, didn't exist in usable amounts. That changed because of tiny organisms, cyanobacteria, that developed photosynthesis. They used sunlight to split water and release oxygen as a byproduct, and they kept doing it for millions of years. That slow exhale of oxygen filled the oceans, then the atmosphere. Eventually, the sky turned blue. The ozone layer formed high above, shielding Earth's surface from deadly radiation. And life, once limited to water, finally came onto land. That's the atmosphere we breathe now. But it's not fixed. It has shifted many times. Carbon dioxide has risen and fallen. Temperatures have warmed and cooled. Ice has spread and melted. Sea levels have gone up and down like tides over the ages. Some of these changes were caused by volcanoes, others by asteroid strikes, and now, for the first time, by us. Humans burn fossil fuels. Coal, oil, natural gas. These are ancient carbon reserves stored inside the planet, compressed over millions of years. When we release them into the air, we change the atmosphere. That affects the climate. And like every system on Earth, the climate responds. This part of the story is still unfolding. Unlike the extinction events we study in hindsight, this one is in progress, and we're part of it. Still, even if we zoom out, way out, we see that Earth is just one actor in an even larger performance. The solar system, the galaxy, the universe. Our Earth orbits a single star, one sun among billions. We circle it once every 365 days. Our moon pulls at our oceans, tilting our axis just enough to create seasons. Occasionally, a comet or asteroid drifts too close. Some simply pass by, others collide. Those collisions have rewritten life's script more than once. Even the solar system isn't still. It turns within the Milky Way, spinning through dust clouds and dark matter, passing near stars and radiation storms. And the sun, it too will change. One day it'll expand, swallowing Mercury and Venus, maybe Earth. Then it will collapse, fading to a cold white ember in a quiet corner of space. All of this makes our little moment feel small, but not meaningless. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. Earth, about 4.5 billion. Dinosaurs lived for 160 million years. Modern humans have only been around for a few 100,000. The civilizations we know, just a few thousand years old. That's a blink compared to what came before. And yet in that blink, we've asked remarkable questions. How did we get here? Why does anything exist? What lies beyond the stars? We've invented languages, built telescopes, walked on the moon, sent robotic explorers to other planets. We've looked into atoms and out into galaxies. We keep searching. We keep asking. We never stop wondering. That's what ties us to everything we've explored in this story, not just biology, not just bones, but curiosity. The drive to understand connects us with the first people who saw a strange fossil and wondered what it meant. It links us to those who mapped the stars, tracked the seasons, told stories of fire in the sky. It's what drives paleontologists into deserts with shovels. What leads geologists to read the layers of rock? What sparks imaginations in museums and classrooms and quiet moments before sleep? When you see a fossil, you're not just seeing a bone, you're witnessing endurance. Life that once was. A life that changed the earth, then disappeared, leaving behind a message. When you hold a rock, you're not just holding stone. You're holding the residue of volcanoes, floods, ancient seabeds, long-lost mountains. A page from the book of Earth. When you hear a bird, you're not just hearing a song. You're hearing the echo of a dinosaur. And when you look into the sky, you're not just looking up, you're looking back. Light from stars takes years, centuries, even millennia to reach us. Some stars you see may already be gone. Their light is their last message. So what do we do with all this? We remember. We respect the timeline we're a part of. We learn from extinctions, from climate shifts, from the way life always finds a way until it doesn't. We realize that just like the dinosaurs, we too are temporary, but we're also extraordinary. We can think, imagine, dream. We can protect what we love, heal what we've hurt, preserve what remains. And we can tell the stories forward, through writing, through speaking, through simply caring. Because knowledge isn't just about facts, it's about connection. To the past, to the earth, to one another. You've made it through millions of years tonight. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you felt wonder. That quiet awe is where science begins. So the next time you hold a stone, watch a bird fly overhead, or glance at the stars, remember you're part of something far bigger. A lineage that goes back to single cells and will stretch, with luck, long into the future. You are stardust in story, bone and thought. You are, in every way, a continuation of the tale we've just told, and it's still being written. Now that we've explored the history of dinosaurs, their rise and fall, their living descendants, and even the ancient earth they walked on, let's reflect on something simple but powerful. The way their story continues to influence us today. Because even though dinosaurs disappeared over 60 million years ago, we're still fascinated by them. They're everywhere. In museums, in books, on shirts, in movies, on toys. Ask a 5-year-old what a triceratops is, and they'll probably describe it with more excitement than they do a real animal they've seen in person. There's something timeless and magnetic about these creatures. Something that stays with us. Maybe it's their size, or their strange shapes, or the mystery. But for many, the love for dinosaurs doesn't stop with childhood, it grows. For some, it becomes curiosity. For others, a passion. And for a few, it becomes a lifetime of scientific discovery. the field of paleontology is still young. The first dinosaur fossil recognized as such was only officially described in the early 1800s. Since then, we've made incredible progress. But even now, new species are being found every year. In deserts, on mountains, and sometimes even in construction sites, fossils are uncovered and carefully examined. And every fossil tells us something new. Each one is a puzzle piece in a story that's still being assembled. Sometimes we find nearly complete skeletons, heads, tails, legs, even teeth still in place. Other times it's a single claw or a small piece of bone or even just an imprint. But each find matters. Even footprints frozen in stone can tell us how fast a dinosaur walked, whether it was alone or in a group, and what direction it was going. Some of the most surprising discoveries have come in recent years. We now know that many dinosaurs had feathers, that their bones grew in ways similar to birds, that some cared for their young, that their social behavior might have been more complex than we assumed. We've even started to guess at their colors, not just the bones, but the skin, the patterns, the plumage. Using electron microscopes and fossilized pigments, scientists can compare ancient samples to those of modern birds. In some cases, they've suggested that certain dinosaurs had black feathers or iridescent sheens like a crow's or even orange crests. It's not just bones anymore, it's biology, behavior, and beauty. And that's where imagination comes in. Because while science gives us evidence, it also invites us to wonder, to take what we know and ask, what might it have looked like, sounded like, smelled like? What was it like to live in that world, to see a herd of sauropods move across the land, or to hear the screech of a raptor in the forest? Movies and books have helped bring those visions to life. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes not so much. But the core idea remains: dinosaurs are real. They lived, they thrived, they vanished, and their bones still lie beneath our feet, waiting to tell us more. Dinosaurs also help us understand extinction, not just as an abstract idea, but as a real and serious force. They were dominant for millions of years, then, in a moment, gone, not because they were weak, not because they failed, but because the world changed, and they couldn't change fast enough. That fact reminds us how precious and fragile life really is. We often think of humans as permanent, as the final form of evolution. But the dinosaurs remind us that no species is immune to change, that climate matters, that balance matters, that the earth is powerful, and that life, no matter how dominant, is always one shift away from collapse. But also, dinosaurs show us resilience. Not everything died. Birds lived, mammals adapted, and from disaster came opportunity. That's one of the most powerful lessons in their story, that endings can lead to beginnings. That loss doesn't erase legacy, it reshapes it. Today, the fact that birds exist means that dinosaurs, in a very real sense, never truly went extinct. They changed, they survived, they're still here, singing in trees, diving into oceans, perched on rooftops, even pecking at crumbs near cafe tables. You don't need to visit a museum to see a dinosaur, just look out your window. And maybe that's the quiet brilliance of their story, that the more we learn about them, the more we realize they're not gone. Not entirely. They're around us, above us, part of the world we live in. That understanding connects us, not just to the ancient past, but to each other. Because when we share dinosaur facts, when we visit a fossil exhibit, when we point out a bird and smile, we're sharing something older than language. We're passing along wonder, and wonder is one of humanity's most important traits. It leads to questions, it leads to exploration, it leads to learning. And that's what science is, not a set of answers, but a way of asking better questions. A way of saying, I don't know yet, but I want to find out. Every paleontologist started with wonder. Every fossil dig began with curiosity. And even now, with modern tools and advanced labs, that simple feeling is still what drives it all. And maybe, just maybe, that's why people still love dinosaurs so much. Because they awaken something quiet but powerful in us. A desire to understand, a respect for time, a feeling of connection. So as we close this story, take a moment to think about what you're a part of. You're not just living in a world that had dinosaurs, you're part of the same timeline. You walk the same planet, you breathe the same air, and the elements in your body, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, were forged in stars, passed through ancient oceans, and recycled through life forms that walked long before we did. We're part of a lineage that includes trilobites, tree ferns, pterosaurs, and yes, dinosaurs. Our story isn't separate from theirs. It's a continuation. And though our chapter is still young, we have the chance to make it a meaningful one, to protect what remains, to explore what's hidden, to share what we find, to wonder together. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope this journey through ancient time helped you relax, learn, or simply enjoy a moment of quiet. The dinosaurs may be gone, but their story is still being told, by rocks, by fossils, by birds, and by people like you who choose to listen. And now perhaps it's time to close your eyes. Let your thoughts wander across prehistoric plains, through misty forests, over quiet oceans where shadows once moved beneath the waves. Let the echoes of the past lull you. Rest well. And remember, you are part of the greatest story ever told.